Iron Maiden's A Matter of Life and Death is one of the most overlooked albums in the band's discography, and yet to this very day it continues shaping the modern Maiden.
Yep.
Released on the 25th of August in 2006, it became the third album after Bruce Dickinson's and Adrian Smith's return, and the third one with the 3 guitarists in the lineup. So as a part of our Up the Irons series, let's dive deeper into A Matter of Life and Death, take a look at some interesting facts about this album, talk about its relations with comics, war, and religion, and then hopefully answer the question of how today, almost 20 years later, A Matter of Life and Death still shapes the modern sound of the British heavy metal legends. Here you go.
You lead me on the path, keep showing me the way.
By the end of the year 2005, Iron Maiden were just taking a break after their Eddie Rips Up the World Tour, a 3-month-long world tour in support of their DVD The History of Iron Maiden Part 1 The Early Days, released earlier in 2004. And just as it was expected, during that run, Iron Maiden concentrated solely on their early days, performing songs from their first 4 studio albums, those of course being Iron Maiden, Killers, The Number of the Beast, and Peace of Mind. And the band finished ripping up the world in September, exactly 2 years after Maiden's last album, Dance of Death, was released. And right then, after Christmas of 2005, Iron Maiden did not only celebrate their 30th anniversary, but also began writing songs for their upcoming 14th studio album. And just a couple of months afterwards, on March 1st, 2006, the band entered the Sam West Studios in London with their longtime producer Kevin Shirley, and thus the work began.
Ouch, who was that? Ow.
I've never been a part of a more fun Maiden session. Lots of laughing, and we've got 8 tracks in the first week, wrote Shirley in his Caveman's Diary on March 10th. Oh, and yeah, by the way, it's worth noting that Kevin Shirley wrote an extensive diary about the recording sessions of A Matter of Life and Death, all in a glorious and so fitting to 2006 Comic Sans.
Eh? No, not at all. No.
But nevertheless, according to Kevin's notes, when it comes to the recording process of A Matter of Life and Death, it might have actually been one of the most fun ones the band has had since their reunion. Bruce was as active and energetic as usual, nailing every track live like it was his last. Steve was sounding better than ever, and the 3 amigos, as Kevin called Adrian, Dave, and Yannick, were roaring in their guitar booths. Although at some point, Yannick was pretty annoyed at Kevin himself for trying to film every little bit of that process. But of course that issue between the two was resolved when Yannick started buying Kevin beers all night long at a pub they went to afterwards. And overall, although Adrian was the most serious and concerned, and Dave was the most amiable, as always, from Kevin's notes, it looks like the band was actually having a great time. Especially at night, since they were doing multiple bar crawls every time they finished work in the studio. So yes, the atmosphere in the band seemed to be pretty incredible, and the creativity has been overflowing, sometimes to the point of having too many choices to go through, which they definitely felt when the time has finally come to choose the title for that record. The funniest thing is that to this very day, we don't know for sure who exactly came up with the title A Matter of Life and Death. The most comprehensive explanation comes from Nick McBrain, who believes it could be Steve, who one day just randomly came up with A Matter of Life and Death. Or Bruce. Or their studio engineer named Drew. And Yannick Garrix actually suggests that the title came from Rod Smallwood himself. So yeah. We have no idea.
Yeah, Nick's having a glass of wine.
And by the way, despite a popular belief, the name A Matter of Life and Death has actually nothing to do with an eponymous 1946 British fantasy drama that was released in the US under the name Stairway to Heaven. And yes, the Led Zeppelin hit also has nothing to do with that particular movie. But either way, the band's 14th studio record actually became only the second one released together with the vocalist Bruce Dickinson that did not derive a name from a song released on that same record. Well, second or third, depending on whether we count Somewhere in Time. or not. But interestingly enough, according to Nico, they actually did discuss using a song name as an album title, mostly concentrating on the ideas like The Pilgrim or The Legacy. Yet according to Nico, the last one was dismissed specifically because there was already a metal album released under the same name, most likely referring to the debut album by the American thrash metal powerhouse Testament, released in 1987, and which, by the way, for the record, I don't care what anyone says, is simply a killer record. Among the other ideas for the title were For the Greater Good of God and Lord of Light, but the band decided that these were a bit too much, and thus decided to land on a no less pretentious, yet nevertheless a very suiting title for the album. A title which perfectly captured the entire essence of this almost concept record.
Then we'll see what happens, take it day by day.
Perhaps it is in its conceptuality, or, well, almost conceptuality, that we can actually find a meaning for this album title.
It's not funny, it's serious, it's heavy metal.
It is no secret that although A Matter of Life and Death is not really a concept album, well, at least in its classic sense, just like pretty much every Iron Maiden album released after the mid-1980s, it does revolve around certain themes. And when it comes to the band's 2006 output, those themes are, of course, war and religion. And this is something pretty much every Iron Maiden band member could agree upon. And I mean, you don't even really have to be an Iron Maiden band member to kind of notice that, right?
Sounding great.
But at the same time, the meaning that lies in that concept, and what is most importantly, the connection between those two themes, did actually differ depending on whom in the band you'd ask. As according to Nick McBrain, a newborn Christian, the connection between war and religion lied in the whole fact that war means death, and death is an ultimate sin. But at the same time, according to the band's mastermind Steve Harris, the themes of war and religion on this album refer to the whole fact that for some, religion means life, but for others, the concepts and the connection between war and religion presented on A Matter of Life and Death were rooted in the fact that although for some religion does mean life, yet at the same time it was religion in which name so many politicians started wars all around the world. So basically the concept described in For Greater Good of God, which actually makes me believe that it actually might be the closest to the title track we get on this record. The artwork for A Matter of Life and Death was created by Tim Bradstreet, known for his work on popular Hellblazer and Punisher series, and also a lifelong Iron Maiden fan. Tim himself recalls spending a better part of his 4 high school years drawing Eddie in every available corner of his school notebooks. So basically exactly the same thing which most of us Iron Maiden fans did throughout the years. But nevertheless, in addition to that, Tim was simply dreaming about one day working on a cover together with his favorite band. And so when he finally got to do that, it was simply a music to his ears to recollect the words of his teachers at that time, which apparently went something like this. Do you honestly think those silly drawings will ever get you a job in the real world? Why don't you just concentrate on your schoolwork and stop wasting your time? And guess what? That kid's silly drawings did eventually become a part of a legend. As for working on the cover, Tim said that the band supplied him with all the tracks and the concept art made by Peacock Design CK. And in addition to that, a very tight deadline. According to Tim, he wanted to do his own version of the cover, but Maiden guys knew exactly what they wanted. And even if the work was some kind of exchange between Tim and the band, in the end he did have to deliver exactly what the band's management asked for. And although some details on it have been changed from the original, still most of the concepts for this artwork were actually created before his involvement. Yet nevertheless, for Tim, who was vastly influenced by Derek Riggs and specifically his early drawings for Iron Maiden, working together with the legendary band was an opportunity of a lifetime, which he has ever since described as one of his wildest dreams. But nevertheless, the artwork itself included a reimagined Korean War era tank and a classic Iron Maiden mascot Eddie imagined as a general standing on that tank and leading an army of skeletons, which of course spiked quite a debate among the Iron Maiden fans. As for some, it did seem way too far from the illustrations made, first of all, by Derek Riggs in the early days, and even compared to some latter works of Iron Maiden. And I do agree with that. Yet at the same time, I have to point out that at least it didn't have any babies surfing on wolves, right? But at the same time, I actually do have one very specific problem with this artwork. And it is actually exactly the same problem that I have also with its predecessor and the follow-up to A Matter of Life and Death, The Final Frontier as well. And it is the Iron Maiden logo, which to this very day, I simply cannot accept as a real Iron Maiden logo. Which to this very day, I simply have no idea whether the band decided to change it, and I still don't really consider it to be a real Iron Maiden logo. Yeah, I know. In October of 2006, Iron Maiden finally kicked off the tour in support of their 14th studio record, on a name for which they most likely have not been thinking as much as on the record itself, simply calling it A Matter of Life and Death Tour. But nevertheless, it did become a very special tour for Iron Maiden, as it has actually become the first and for now the only tour on which the band performed their latest studio release in its entirety.
Tell me why, turn it down!
And yes, although many fans applauded the bold idea, the others weren't really too thrilled about that. Yet the band stood firm on their decision, even understanding that they were gonna get some negative response about that. And according to Nico, that was what the band wanted to do. And at that point, they didn't really care as much about whether it did coincide with what their fans wanted or not.
Well, Iron Maiden is apparently...
And still, A Matter of Life and Death reached top 10 in the United States, the first ever Maiden album with US top 10 status. So there were lots of people who actually wanted to listen to that album in its entirety. And at least for them, that tour was actually a huge hit. And yet still, although the band did stay firm on their decision for the second part of the tour in 2007, they changed things up a bit, calling it A Matter of a Beast tour, and did add a bunch of classics for the casual fans into the setlist as well, and limiting the amount of songs from A Matter of Life and Death to only 5, which still was a much better representation than many other Iron Maiden albums got on the road. So what about A Matter of Life and Death? Why does it actually matter so much? Well, there are a bunch of reasons. According to Steve Harris, A Matter of Life and Death was the heaviest record they made up to date, and the Maiden mastermind also called it very progressive, something like Dream Theater from the 1970s. In addition, it was the album which was recorded live in the studio, so what we hear on the record is pretty much exactly how the band played it, and possibly that's why they actually decided to play it live in its entirety. It was an album on which Iron Maiden continued their journey towards more complex and more lengthy songs, even more so than they did on Dance of Death, with only 3 songs from it being under 7 minutes. A huge contrast to the early days of Iron Maiden they promoted just a year before this album.
Oi, no, look, Eddie, no!
But at the same time, the biggest importance of this album, at least to me, lies in something different. It lies in exactly the same dimension in which it also is the most overlooked album in the Iron Maiden catalog. Its influence on its follow-ups. A Matter of Life and Death did not only mark a brand new approach to recording music for Iron Maiden in the 21st century, but it also opened the gate to a new era of Iron Maiden. An era in which they started releasing albums on which they simply do not give a damn about what anybody thinks. Interestingly enough, A Matter of Life and Death might be the very first album in Iron Maiden's entire career which does not actually have a very, very strong and catchy standalone single, which could sell this album by itself. And yet still, this album was one of the biggest successes this band has ever had up until then, upon its release. As instead of giving their all to one or two singles, Iron Maiden actually released an album which may be the most consistent in their career, or at least it was so in 2006. And it was an album without any roller coasters. And although, yes, of course, I, just like pretty much any Iron Maiden fan, do have my personal favorite track off of it, I think you know which one is that. Nevertheless, one may argue that each and every one of the songs on A Matter of Life or Death was equally strong. And this is something that Iron Maiden started propagating from 2006 onwards. Once again, going somewhat against the grain of the music industry. And instead of concentrating on the singles, concentrating on the strength of an album as a whole. And this, my friends, is what once again makes Iron Maiden one of the greatest heavy metal bands on the planet. As not everyone can pull it off. As in 2006, at the 31st year of their existence, Iron Maiden did not only dare to, make a slight switch in their sound, but actually completed a transition to an absolutely new era of Iron Maiden, and yet still continued gathering stadiums and possibly have grown to an even bigger state than they were before. But anyways, what do you guys personally think about A Matter of Life and Death, and which is your personal favorite track from this album? Please let us know in the comments. As always, thank you so much for watching this video, guys, and we will prevail. Slava Ukraini!